This is an extract from the Leader Coronavirus Daily podcast by the Evening Standard and hosted by me, David Marsland. To hear the whole thing, search for it on your podcast provider. Last year, Amazon's revenues in the UK went up from £10.9 billion to £13.7 billion. Their tax bill on all those billions is £293 million. MPs like Labour's Margaret Hodge say that's unacceptable. In fact, she's called it utterly obnoxious. Mark Chaplin from our City Desk is here, though. Mark, why does Amazon pay so little tax?
So Amazon pays so little tax because of the way it's structured. So it uses different jurisdictions around the world for different tax purposes. For instance, it can lodge its profits elsewhere. It could take its profits from the UK and lodge them in Ireland or another country. By moving your money around like that, you avoid certain tax regimes, and that way you pay less tax on profits in particular.
And it says its operating profits, although it doesn't reveal them, are relatively low as well.
Yeah, so Amazon has this very unique model where it doesn't actually focus on profit. So what it tries to do is grow its revenue as fast as possible. So it's about eating everything up, which it has done very successfully, particularly in this country. If you have a large profit as a corporation, you have to pay a lot of tax, a lot of corporation tax on that profit. If your profits are low, your taxes are lower. In some instances, there are some companies, Amazon don't do this, but there are some companies that deliberately run a loss. Because if you deliberately run a loss, you can have huge revenues. You can have billions of pounds worth of revenue. But if you run a loss, you don't actually have to pay any tax at all.
And now we've got MPs like Labour's Margaret Hodge who say that Jeff Bezos has a moral obligation to pay more tax. But if he doesn't have a legal one, he's probably not going to, is he, Mark?
There's a very American way of looking at this, which is it is all about business. And if you can get away with it, why wouldn't you? I mean, in fairness to Bezos, he's not the only businessman to do this. The argument from Hodge is an interesting one, which is that Amazon's just announced it's going to hire 7,000 UK workers. And she's quite right. They're well educated, they're going to be reasonably healthy, and they're going to need to use the roads and the public transport to get to work. So why isn't Bezos making a contribution to that? In that way, it's not actually moral. It's sort of just plain common sense, really.
But I think Amazon would probably say that, you know, even if their tax bill's not high, they're directly investing, they say, £23 billion into the UK. So it's not like they're putting nothing in, Mark.
No, and they have built huge infrastructure in this country. They've got big warehouses, they employ thousands of people. Undoubtedly, at a time when coronavirus, when you see all these endless job losses, for Amazon to turn around and say we're going to hire more workers by Christmas, you can't really fault them for that. I mean, they deserve credit for that. I don't think that's really the argument. I think the argument is more the fact that, okay, well, if you're going to come over here and you are going to have the massive impact that you have had, you know, they've put a lot of bookstores out of business to start off with. They will put a lot of retailers out of business. I mean, they've recently signed a supermarket deal. I'm sure the UK supermarkets will be very worried. Now, that's all fine. That's capitalism. It's a hard game. It's a nasty game. But if you're going to do that, you should be paying tax as well.
And it's not just Amazon. There's been criticism on Facebook, on Google, these big tech companies making vast amounts of money but not paying vast tax bills. Is there anything people are doing about that?
Yeah, I mean, we do actually have a tech tax in this country, but Amazon and all the big tech firms nonchalantly just decided to pass on the cost of that tax onto the customer, which I mean, it's just remarkable, really. I mean, that really is quite nonchalant and quite obnoxious. Really, what we need is a coordinated global effort. I don't think the UK can do this by itself. For the UK government to think that they're single-handedly going to take on all the biggest tech players on the world is a little ridiculous. It will take the French and the Germans and the US and everybody coming together and trying to work out some sort of tax structure so that these companies can't just move their money around and avoid certain tax systems that they don't like.
And of course, there are people like the CEO of Amazon who are making huge amounts of money themselves, aren't they, Mark?
Yeah, I think this is what's particularly galling for the average individual in this country is that Bezos in 2019 became the richest man in the world. He's now richer than Bill Gates. He has a fortune of about 150 billion pounds, which is just an astronomical sum of money. Amazon itself is worth about 1.2 trillion. So, I mean, if he thinks he's going to get any sympathy, I'm sure he doesn't want any sympathy, but he thinks he's going to get any sympathy, he's not going to get any.
Search for the Leader Coronavirus Daily on any podcast provider to hear more from the podcast.